Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
It feels like I've known Dorina for all her life. We've met in Melbourne some almost 25 years ago, I think. And we've journeyed together in church, and her dad was actually my youth leader for a while, and then we were together at youth, and then I became a youth leader, and just over the years we've done so many things together, and in this season of life, even though we're doing different things, we just realize how much we've got in common. And tonight here at Kingdom Stories from Down Under, it's an absolute privilege to introduce to you Dorina Crisan. Welcome, Dorina.
Thank you, Nati. What an honor to be here after so many years. Thank you.
What year did you come to Australia? 89? Or?
No, 1990. In
1990.
Austria, and then 1990 we got accepted in Australia.
1990. I think I remember your dad and your mum.
Back in Melbourne.
Yeah, back in Melbourne at the Bush Church.
That's right. Humble beginnings.
Yeah,
yes.
It's good. So how old were you when you landed here?
I ended up, I was 8 when I left Romania. I stayed 1 year in Austria, and then by the age of 9 I arrived in Australia with mum and dad and my older sister, Lydia.
Nice. What's the age difference between you and Lydia?
About 3.5 years.
3.5 years, okay. So you say Austria. Where were you born in Romania?
Deva.
In Deva.
Yes.
Were your parents living in Brad?
Yes. Originally, my mum and dad started off in Sibiu. My dad
Who's from Sibiu? Dad or mum?
Yeah, he was from Cluj, and then Sibiu, and then that's where he met my mum. And then from there, they moved to Brad. Okay. And then from Brad, here we are.
Which Brad means pine tree.
Yes, we literally had a pine tree in front of our building. And I think you visited the building where we stayed.
Yeah, we have.
Few times.
As a small boy, I used to travel there because we had a common friend.
That's right.
And we used to go there on holidays, and it was just amazing. We loved that place. So I just at the bottom of the hills and mountains behind, it was a beautiful, beautiful town. What memories do you have of your childhood?
I think they were the most amazing memories as a child, especially summer holidays for me. It was a time when we used to go back to our grandparents for the summer holidays. I think they were the most memorable ones.
Yeah.
We were left there to spend as much time as we can in freedom, chasing animals. Staying with our grandparents was probably the most freedom I ever got. Yeah. And then we lived in the sort of city area for us, which was a bit more restricted. But I think the most memorable for me was also living winter and snow, which we've never experienced here in Australia. And I love my kids to be able to experience that. But they were just that freedom to be a child, not stuck behind a computer or a phone. Gadget. So it was all those things that you think that every child would experience. And I look at my children, we try to give them the same thing, but I think they were priceless.
Yeah.
So,
what's your earliest memory of childhood? 4 or 5? 3?
About 4 or 5, I would imagine. I do remember actually your mum, your beloved mum, and your sister used to babysit us. I don't know if you actually knew that.
Here or
in Romania?
Wow.
In Romania.
Which one?
Nicoletta.
Wow.
She was actually a babysitter quite a few times.
There you go.
And also your mum, I remember her, she used to sing.
Yes, she did.
She had a beautiful voice, and I do have fond memories of her, and even in Melbourne as well. So that would have been probably 5, 6.
Yeah.
As far as I remember.
So how did you get to Austria? Your dad went first, or you all went together?
No, my dad actually, I think from what I remember, he fled. He went to Austria. We didn't see him for about 1 year.
So he left before the wall came down?
Yes,
before the revolution.
Okay. So in 1989, he left. We didn't see him for 1 year. And then after that...
So he crossed the border illegally into Hungary?
Yes, and then to Austria.
Yeah.
And then my mum, she crossed the border but was caught, and she went to prison for, I remember, 3 months. And it was probably the hardest time for my parents. We were left with our uncle and auntie who took us in. We weren't going to end up in a in a children's home.
Oh, orphanage.
Because we were classified as children that were being abandoned.
Yeah.
And now that's Arlene and Diana's parents. So we stayed with them for about a year, and they took us on as their children. And during that time, Mum ended up with Dad in Austria. Dad was able to take her from the prison, and they both worked together really hard. And
so where was she caught? In Romania?
I think no.
In Hungary?
No, Serbia.
Oh, in Serbia.
Serbia.
Oh, so she wasn't caught in Romania. She was caught in Serbia.
Crossing. Yeah, crossing over.
On the other side.
That's right.
But she was going to carry on and cross into Austria.
That's right. That's right.
And so she was kept in a Serbian,
that's right.
or former Yugoslavian
that's right.
prison. Okay.
Yes.
And somehow Dad
managed to take her. There was a group of them, and I think 3 of them were able to cross over. The rest of them were sent back to Romania.
Wow, beautiful.
It was God's hand, I truly believe.
And then you were still in Romania, both of you?
So both me and my sister were there, and then about a year later, Mum and Dad organised for somebody to come and take us with passports and everything by train.
By then the revolution had happened?
No, we left, and then the revolution started right after we left.
So how did you get passports and everything?
I have no idea. I just know it was legally all done. There was a lady they had worked for in Austria, and she was obviously she was there for years. She was a veterinarian, and then they paid her enough money to be able to go back to Romania by train, and then transport us back to
Austria.
Yeah, Austria.
And were they free in Austria, or they were in a refugee camp?
They were in a refugee camp, so they were able to work and start making money to be able to raise money to bring us over.
Do you remember the journey from Romania to Austria?
It was probably the most exciting journey for us. I remember that my auntie bought us these beautiful dolls, and dolls were scarce back in Romania. If you remember, we had these big dolls. I think they were as big as us.
Yeah.
And I remember she dressed us in beautiful suits. We even got photos. And I remember when we were getting close to Austria, both me and Lydia were jumping from one side to another, trying to see Mum and Dad. We haven't seen them for about a year. So it was like so emotional, because as soon as we saw them, we jumped out of the train. I remember it was the most amazing feeling. You don't see your parents for so long.
So you would have been 7?
About 8, 7, 8, yeah.
So year 2 or year 3?
Yes, I stayed back 1 year because I sort of missed the traveling in Austria, and then we ended up going to Austria. We had to go to school. That was really, really hard.
German.
I think in whole year I've learned how to count up to 10. Guten Tag, and I think good evening, and that was about it. It was hard. It was hard. Yeah, very hard.
And how did you make the transition to Australia? So they were seeking asylum in various places. Did they choose Australia, or because they could have probably chosen US or Canada as well?
Yeah, it was America. Mum's got relatives there, and it was America or Australia. And they both prayed for it and said, look, if it's God's will, he'll open up doors either to America or he'll be Australia. And Australia was a country that God chose us to end up, and here we are.
So you flew to Melbourne in 1990. So you spent about a year in Austria.
Yes.
Okay. Made some friends there?
We did. We actually met a lot of Romanian friends, and even now, a lot of them have actually ended up here in Australia with us. I think you know quite a few of the Romanian people from Austria that ended up here. And then by divine intervention, I think a lot of us ended up in the same church. And Mariana Filimon were actually the main people that we stayed with, and it felt like home when we came to Melbourne and then Perth.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of Romanians, I think, that either ended up in Australia or America.
Wow.
So Australia was for us.
Melbourne,
yes, first Melbourne. That was
now
2 years.
English, new language, a bit better than German, or still daunting?
It was amazing. I think for me, German they were great people, but they were very cold. I think for me it was hard to get warm up to people. And then when I ended up in Melbourne, I remember my first day going to school. I went home and I told Dad we got to sleep at lunchtime. After we came back from our recess, we got to sleep. They read our stories, and everybody wanted to be a friend. So instantly, I just absolutely loved Australia. The warmth that they received us, it was so different. I think because
And this was Noble Park Primary, or what was the?
that was primary school. That was primary school in Melbourne. So,
Do you remember which one?
No, I think it was Dandenong.
Dandenong Primary?
Dandenong. That was the one, yeah.
And you stayed with Philemon, or you stayed in a flat?
No, first, I think a few months until we settled in. We stayed with Mariana and Georgia Philemon. And then it was a Romanian church that we got to know a lot of people. And I think that's where we were there as well. Yeah. That's right. But they were the first people that I remember as a child, and we knew them from Austria as well, and they had children as well that we sort of bonded with.
Did you eventually live on Edith Street with all the Romanians in a flat?
We sure did.
You
yes.
did?
Yeah, there were a lot of Romanians. There was a group of us that we all ended up going to school together.
Yeah.
I remember Fratele Beneficui, as we know, one of our pastors. He had a small little car that he used to load. I think there was about 6 or 7 of us in the same car. He used to pick everybody up, and we all went to school. So it felt like home, I think, because there was so many of us, all in the same situation, I think. Fresh arrived to Australia and trying to settle in.
So how long were you in Melbourne?
For 2 years. And in 92...
That soon you came across
here.
So you came before we did?
That's right. I think Dad and 2 other families, Mariana, Philemon and Georgia, and there was another family that came with them at the same time.
Do you know why?
Yeah, I remember Mum said, she was always sick in Melbourne because of the cold weather, and we had heard that Perth was warm and it was nice and hot and things were moving over there, so we thought we'll make the shift. So
they came by faith?
By faith. They knew nobody here.
Sold everything?
Sold everything.
Got in a car and drove across?
Yeah, we drove across. Yeah. That was a challenge. No air conditioning.
Yeah, I know.
I remember it was a Ford Falcon, and we slept in the car.
Yeah, as you do.
You do. You couldn't lie down, so it was 4 of us in the car, and
all the gear and all the clothes. Even though you've only been here 2 years,
we didn't have a lot, but what we had was all packed in that little car, and we crossed over.
Somebody asked me, they said, Natanael, what is one word that you can describe Romanians with? And I said, cloth nevors. Because we like clothes, high nivori kind of thing. Everybody's got too many clothes. So.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that's all we packed from Melbourne, and we moved over here. I think for me, what I've seen in my parents, they were such hard workers. Yeah. And they were, learning to adapt. I think moving from Romania to Austria. And then,
so your dad would have been in his 40s when he moved here?
Yes, in his 40s.
Mid-40s, early 40s?
Early 40s.
Early 40s. So still challenging to adapt.
Absolutely.
And then your mum as well.
And they didn't know English. I think before we left Austria, once we knew we were going to either Australia or America, we went to a school and we had to learn basic English. So he helped us a little bit, but it was harder for Mum and Dad because they had to make money. So in Australia, all they did was work.
And then when they came here again, rather than going to English school, they focused on work.
Well, Mum said, she was always a hard worker, so for her it was like there wasn't a choice.
Yeah.
Anything they could to make money, they threw themselves into and worked.
Yeah, which is healthy. It's the right attitude.
They had good work ethics, and I think that's something that I saw in my parents from a very young age.
So you moved here in Perth. So by now you're 10, 11?
Yes.
And how did Perth seem to you?
Well,
was it summer or was it?
Oh, it was hot. I think it was in March. Okay. It was still hot, but I remember we came to Perth and it felt like a desert. We cried for the first 2 months. I think there was a dry tear every night. I think I remember Lydia saying we want to go back
to Melbourne.
We wanted to go back to Melbourne.
There was friends and
it was a big church. I think there were, if I'm not mistaken, from what I remember, it was over 100 people at least in that church. Yeah. And we came here. There was like.
Were we in Belgrade by then? Was the church in Belgrade by then, or was it on Ann Street in Dandenong?
Dandenong, the first
in
church.
The school.
That's right. Yeah, it was in the school. Yeah, so it was quite small back then. And when we came to Perth, I remember it was a little community. I think there were about 10 or 15, maybe max 20 families. Yeah. And it was a shock to us. I felt like we were in a little country town. Everybody was so laid back. And we were like, what is this place? This is not what we thought.
You can't even buy fuel on Sunday.
No, everything was closed. The city was different. I remember everybody wearing thongs, and it was like, what is this place? It's like a country. Yeah, it was like a country town. It was like, this is not a city that we wanted to go to. So, it was very hard for us to adapt. And not knowing anyone, I think it was even harder.
Yeah.
Except 2 families that came with us.
And then the school?
The school, I remember it was a primary school. Because I got used to in Melbourne, I think my English started to improve. So I adapted very quickly as a child.
Would have been more challenging for Lydia than for you?
For my sister, yeah, because she had to move to high school, but she adapted pretty easily as well. Yeah. For us, it was easy. I think for our parents, it was probably a little bit harder if you were
So they found work here quite easily?
Yes, my mum went to, I think it was Safeway first in Melbourne. She picked up a chicken and she looked for the address and she went. She didn't know how to speak English, but she could work. So she ended up working in a chicken's factory.
In Melbourne?
In Melbourne.
Okay.
And then when she moved to Perth, continued for the same company. And long story short, in the end, both mum and dad became managers and they worked side by side until they were made redundant, and they really worked really well together.
Nice.
But they started very humble beginnings.
Yeah. Well done. Teenage years for you in Australia, not very challenging?
I think we were very isolated being in Perth, but it was a good thing in a lot of ways.
Protected,
we were
sheltered?
very well protected. I think we were very... we weren't isolated, but I think we didn't have the internet back in the day. We didn't have phones. We still had the phone plugged to the wall. If you wanted to make a phone call, but everybody knew each other. And I think the teenage years, as you know, because you were part of that, that sort of a time that we sang together. Everybody sort of went up to church, to park, and we played together soccer and different activities. So it was very much, it was fun times, and everybody sort of had a lot of time.
Didn't you join the orchestra with the guitar initially?
We did, and you were the one that founded the whole orchestra. Yes, that was.
And why did you not continue? Do you remember?
No, I think I started working, and then I couldn't do as much as I was involved in music and church activities.
Because I know those who did continue with the orchestra, they form a very eclectic group because they were together so much. They were at least twice a week for 4 hours, plus the drive. Right. A lot of them I would pick up in the van, so it was fun. But even at youth on Tuesdays, it was pretty good times.
Yeah. I think after we moved, there were a lot of people from Melbourne that had come to Perth, so the church grew.
Yeah, we came in 94, I think.
94, so I think by 2000, it was probably, what would you say, 500 more members?
No.
Less?
I don't think it ever crossed 300.
No? So it was
But
still,
anyway, it grew.
It grew, I think, more from what I remember. I mean, that was back in probably before 2000.
Yeah.
So from a couple of families, it definitely grew, and we loved it. We thought it was great growing up, and we had people that we sort of known for years.
What was the most challenging, let's say, aspect about your youth? What was the most difficult aspect of being a teenager in Australia, or being?
I think we weren't too involved. We were very much with the Romanian community, and we didn't know people outside that community. We were sort of cocooned, I guess, in a lot of ways. And once we started working and starting to meet other people, it gave me a different perspective about life and youth and people, obviously other youth that were experiencing different hardship, and it opened my eyes, I think, in different ways, and things that we were conditioned to believe, but also in our faith. I started to challenge probably a lot of my beliefs, and why am I believing some things that I've been raised up to believe. So I started questioning a lot of things, and then that's when I think I started to do more research, read, started to listen to things as they came available online on YouTube that came around. So that was, I think for me, was that challenge where I wanted to know more. I wanted to research more. I wanted to meet people that could bring me more value, so to speak.
When did you commit your life to the Lord?
I was just before I turned 18.
What made it? Was it a true encounter, or did that come later on?
I think for me, because we were raised in a Christian family, the values were always there. And I knew when I was at a stage in my life that I wanted to make a commitment to the Lord. That was a time for me where I thought I was mature enough to say, yes, I'm ready to dedicate my life to Christ. and declare it to the world. So for me,
Yeah.
it was the right time. It wasn't about an age, and being raised, in a church that you worship and you hear the word. I think that was just the decision that I had made.
No encounter, nothing radical that has happened
No.
after, maybe?
After, oh yes.
Okay, leave that for later. But it's interesting because some people have it, and
A specific encounter.
that makes them commit, and others, they do it because they know that it's part of, their Christian life and it's obedience to God. But then later on, they actually have a proper, a real conversion in a sense.
Absolutely.
And that's good. Marriage.
Yes.
You met Daniel when you were quite young, or you started?
Yes, I met him when I came to Perth first time. I think meeting the family, I remember that first night that we went to church, Dad said, oh, we're going to go to the pastor's house and they've got 10 children.
Oh.
I thought, wow, great.
You can play.
And it was just a small family. We were a small family, and I remember going to the house and I couldn't believe it. It looked like they had no children because everything was immaculate, everything was in order.
Yeah.
And I thought, where are these 10 kids? And then I remember I saw 3 little ones that came out, and the oldest came out, and that's when I met Danny. So I think it was love at first sight, maybe.
You were 10.
I didn't realise. Maybe for him, but not for me.
He was what, 12, 13?
14.
14. 4 years with him.
Yeah, so 4 years between us.
Yeah.
But yes, it was the first time that I had met him, and as a child, I didn't know any better.
But by 14, 15, you were already sort of dating.
Started to like him, yes. Yeah. And dating meant that we went to church, and it was choir, and it was youth nights.
And you looked at each other.
That's right. And that was dating for us.
Yeah,
that was something that was done at church, so to speak. And we had a band that we sort of had together with Dad and a couple of the other guys, and that was our time that we spent together, I guess, in our youth.
It's nice though. It's like a dance.
We grew up together, so to
journey.
speak. Absolutely.
And so when did you tie the knot?
In 2000 we got married. That was the first church where he still is now.
Yeah.
We were the first ones to get married.
First wedding there.
First wedding to get married there. And,
how old were you? 19?
18.
18.
I just turned 18 and
Ready.
madly in love.
Yeah.
And here we are, 22, 23 years nearly.
Okay.
Still happily married with 2 beautiful kids.
And you had the reception at Morley?
Recreation Centre.
Recreation Centre, yeah.
Well, we had so many people, I think, because there weren't many weddings back in the day.
Yes.
We had the Baptist church and the Romanian church. And
well, ours wasn't far behind yours,
no,
a year or something.
That's right.
A year and a half, I think, behind you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Time just flies.
Yeah. So you finished year 12. What did you do? You got married, obviously. Yeah. But did you continue? Did you go to TAFE? Did you do courses? Did you go to uni?
No,
or did you start working?
No, so I remember I was about 14, 15, and back in the day you could work. And I was still at high school, and I always wanted to work. I just had this passion, desire, because I've seen our parents work very hard. We were never given anything on a silver platter. And we weren't spoiled kids, but we were well looked after. Yeah. We never had anything that was extravagant, and we weren't kids that would ask for anything else but the basic necessities, and we were happy kids. But for me, I wanted to work, and I started working in it was different agencies that would give you work, and you would just call them up, and they would give you random work. So for me, my first job I remember was at Peter's Ice Cream.
Yeah.
And we used to work after school hours. We used to go and work there.
So you're still in high school?
I was still in high school.
Okay.
And I think I developed that work ethic from a very, very young age. And I think it was that self-worth that I discovered very young. And I just wanted to learn. And I think for me, it was just wanting to be in different industry. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. But by the time that I finished high school, I wanted to work as a receptionist or some secretary work or some reception work. And I started to work for a company. It was a Food Packaging Australia, it was called. And I did reception work. And before I knew it, I was getting bored answering phones. And I thought, I need to start talking to people. I wanted to be in contact with people. And I knew that from a very early age.
Yeah.
So that was my first encounter. And I did a lot of different jobs ever since then.
Customer service.
customer
Retail.
service, sales. I think the biggest thing for me was network marketing.
When did you start that?
I was 18, so we got married, and I got involved into a network marketing by accident from a lady that met me in a shopping centre, and she approached me. She said, "Would you be interested in health and nutrition?" I thought, why not? And story short, it literally led me to get into the industry where I've learned a lot of skills about sales and personal development, and it really opened that door for me to look more into it. And that was probably the best thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Get involved into the industry.
So you immersed yourself in MLM.
We did. We even sold our first home after we got married. After 2 years, we sold our first home and we travelled around Australia, and that's all we did.
Both of you?
Network marketing.
Wow.
Danny got out of his job, and we both did it.
Wow.
So yeah.
Good. You still have residual income out of that? No.
No. One of the companies, yes,
Okay.
but I've put it on hold, and I've gone into other ventures. But I think it was a key foundation where God trained me up for
evangelism.
Absolutely. And I think for things that He's prepared me for, I think it was a stepping stone for where He's led me.
Yeah.
It's given me a lot of social skills, and I think a lot of confidence, and just wanting to know people and listen to people. And I think that industry, I can't speak highly enough.
Yeah.
Of the
especially
value that you get.
I think you went in the right MLM.
Yes.
And with the right people, and you had good support.
Absolutely.
And they had good funnels and good programs, and it was a well done one. Because a lot of them are poorly done. I
think in anything, in any business, you can get the good, the bad, and the ugly. And for me, I was so hungry to learn, and I think I was looking for all the good things. Yes, a lot of bad things that happened. I would see them, but
MLM is not for everybody, and you learn that very quickly.
Absolutely.
And you go with those people who are ready, and those who are not. But even those who are not, they're just consumers. They're still consumers.
That's right.
They'll buy the product.
1%, I think, are the ones that really succeed. And for me, it was getting to know people that were highly immersed into the industry, and I looked at the skills that they developed
and the mindset.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing. If it did anything, it changed your mindset. It lifted it to another level.
And I think that became that hunger for me. I became aware of my thoughts, my actions,
habits,
absolutely everything.
Self-talk.
That's right.
Did you notice that you were thinking differently, that you were more positive, they had different outlooks?
Absolutely.
And the people that you were sharing things with, it just went over their heads?
Absolutely. I think when you meet people that are like-minded, they get it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people, when you start maybe going to those industries or growing, you find they may lose some friends.
Yeah.
Or you leave some people behind. I think not because they do it intentionally, but I think maybe they don't understand, and they want to hold you back so they don't lose you.
It's because everything changes. Your language changes. I think I mentioned this to you. I remember meeting you in town. I was with Raluca once, and we met you. And I noticed you looked us in the eyes when you chatted with us for 5 minutes, and you smiled, and you had, just the way you came in that conversation. It demonstrated that you had the social skills that most people don't have. Most people don't look you in the eyes.
It's true.
Most people don't smile. They don't, and you had those skills. And I remember I said to Raluca, I said, whatever she's doing, she's on the right path, because it was uncommon for Romanians to be that, open and bubbly and ready to engage in life and positive and embracing everything, not whinging about everything else. And, we noticed that, and it was good to see.
They were the very first early stages for me, and I think that was a breaking moment for me, where the first leaders that I had, they said, you have to go and talk to people and find and recruit people.
Yeah.
And I thought, how am I going to do that? I only know people in my community, but they're not going to be interested. And I remember they said to me, right, you're going to go out there and speak to strangers. Well, I froze.
Yeah.
I thought, what am I going to say to these people? That I could just going to have a question and go and ask them. And every day I remember I used to go and walk the streets maybe for an hour in town. And every time somebody would pass, I'd be like, no, I'll do the next one. I'll do the next one. And then every day I went back, and I remember I spoke to 2 people the next day. And the next day I spoke to like maybe 5 people, 10 people. And then it became a habit. It was a numbers game for me.
Yeah.
And then that confidence just kept on building. And that industry just made the ground for me to be able to have that confidence and social skills that I really, really desperately needed.
And it's interesting because it's all in our heads. It's
Absolutely.
not real.
Absolutely, I agree.
It's like the whole world is waiting for you to show up.
That's right.
And you think that nobody cares.
That's right. I think most of the time we're in our heads. As soon as we get out of our heads and put
somebody
people
once
first,
said, if you're in your head, you're dead.
That's right. Very true. But I think it's when we focus on other people and other people's needs, everything has shifted for me.
Yeah.
And I thought,
because even it wasn't about sales. I think initially it is about sales because you got to get your numbers. But after that, you're more relaxed, and it's about connection. It's about consulting. It's about helping people. And if they buy the product, good. If they want to do the business, good. And if not, that's fine.
I think what made it easy for me is when you believe in something that it can help somebody.
Yeah, you have to have the conviction.
You have to believe.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was like having a gift that I can pass to somebody else. And once I got hold of that for me became easy.
Yeah.
I wanted to help people. I know that I wanted to help people from a very young age.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know the vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think God's led me to where He wants me to be.
And this has helped Danny as well, hasn't it?
In a lot of ways, yes. Very supportive husband, I got to say.
Also, in his social skills, it would have helped him.
Absolutely.
And
it's challenging.
And when there's 2 of you, I mean, the force is like being 4 or 5.
Yeah.
There's so much strength in that.
I think it's in not every industry or not every couple could embrace the industry together. And I was very blessed to have Danny support me in what I wanted to do. And both of us, I think, working and meeting strangers and talking and presenting to people, it gave us that confidence to step out of that comfort zone. So definitely the skills that we gained from that are priceless.
And the children, when did they come along?
So we had Jessica for 5 years, 6 years after we got married.
Yeah.
We travelled. We wanted to travel. We were so young, and we just wanted to get to know each other and travel and learn. And, we were ready to come back to Perth because we travelled around Australia.
How long did you go? A year?
We were travelling for about nearly 4 years. 4 years. And then we decided to have a family, and everybody was still based in Perth. So we decided to come back. And,
so where did you spend most of your time? Queensland or Victoria?
It was Gold Coast.
Gold Coast.
So in Melbourne we only stayed a little bit, and then we ended up going to the Gold Coast. And we used to call it heaven on a stick because it was always hot. Yeah. You always wanted to
the
have
weather
fun,
is
and it was amazing. So
especially a little bit south of the Gold Coast.
Yes.
It's just beautiful.
My favourite place, I got to say, was Toowoomba.
Okay. Yeah.
Toowoomba, I know, is out there, a bit more country, but I remember driving there, and it was my time to listen to audio tapes. We had audio tapes back in the day, but also just that sort of view, and the drive was amazing.
Have you ever met John Alley?
No.
Oh, you should have.
Who's that?
Well, an apostle from.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Great guy.
No.
Oh man, if you had known.
I missed out.
Yeah.
Got to go back.
Great guy. Yeah. So you came back. You had Jessica, and obviously beautiful.
Jessica,
Thrill.
yes.
How did that change your life?
Well, young parents, gosh, she became the center of our world, and everything evolved around her.
Does she know it?
She knows it, absolutely. I think she knew from the day she was born. She had us, wrapped around her little finger, especially Danny. I think it was the best thing that ever happened to us. I think when they put that child in your hands, your whole world, the happiness that you have, you can't describe it unless you're a parent. Yeah. And then we had beautiful Simon 4 years later. That was an experience.
What happened there?
I nearly lost my life with him. I ended up in intensive care for about a week. He was a big baby. He was 4.5 kilos. And I know that it's all in God's hands that I'm still here. and he gave me an extra chance to do his will, I guess. But it's
Complications with
complications,
birth?
yeah, just giving birth. He was a big boy, my uterus ruptured, and I ended up bleeding just about to death. I think, a lot of, females would probably go through similar stuff. But that was life-changing for me. That I knew when I woke up from theatre, I remember I just felt like blessed. And I remember I cried. Even a month later, I used to stand outside and just watch people go by. I used to cry. I just felt grateful. I felt grateful to be alive. I was like grateful for the simple things. I remember the first time I went home from the hospital, I said to Daddy, give me the vacuum cleaner because I want to vacuum. I wanted to get back to normal. That to me was like being normal again. I was so desperate.
Being human.
Yeah.
Am I alive? Let me vacuum.
Let me vacuum. It's crazy to sound. For me, was like, give me the vacuum cleaner. It was something that it's like, you have to do it. I wanted to get back to normal. I didn't want to be sick. For me, being sick, I think I couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
And I fought very hard to get back to my health. I just refused to be complaining absolutely. That was not on the table for me. I've been given a second chance of life, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to run with this. Yeah. I'm going to make it count.
Have you felt detached from the body at any stage in clinical death or not?
No, but I know prior to me going into having Simon, Mari Aluferi, she did have the Holy Spirit told her to tell my mum. I remember she was at prayer and she said, tell Dorina that whatever will happen will be okay. And when I went into the theatre room and it was very chaotic, I just knew, and I asked for the blood of Jesus to be upon me.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was going to be okay through the whole chaotic thing. And the doctor said,
So you had to go through C-section, or
I delivered him naturally, and then I ended up hemorrhaging.
Oh, okay.
So then they took me to theatre, and it was quite chaotic and traumatic.
So you nearly lost your life, but the baby was always fine? Or the
It was big, healthy, 4.5 kilos, ready to run. He was ready from the get-go.
Yeah.
Big boy, and he's thriving. Yeah, it's a big blessing for us. As a both are. But yeah, that changed me, honestly. But now...
Do you think that going through a near-death experience is a massive blessing in somebody's life?
I think when I look at both of my kids, they remind me of what I went through.
Yeah.
And this is probably the first time that I haven't cried. And I think I look at all those little experiences with the family. We value them so much.
Yeah.
We enjoy working, we enjoy doing all the other stuff, but I think time with our family is so important. Because I think that's why we work so hard, that's why we do all these things, to enjoy that quality time with our family. And we're raising a generation, that will serve God.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to be there for them.
Yeah.
And raise them up in the right way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that, every day is a gift? Like,
absolutely.
No matter, like, I've gone through death a couple of times, actually, maybe 3 times.
Wow.
But one, I was detached from the body. I actually left the body and I saw my body on the ground. And now, like when I go through various encounters in life, I have this attitude. I've been there. This can't be worse. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
Even if I lose everything, I'm thinking just being alive is good enough.
Absolutely.
You know
God's
what I'm saying?
not done with you yet.
Yeah.
I think every morning that I wake up, God, you're not done with me yet.
Yeah.
What else can I do to serve you? So absolutely, I think I'm so grateful for every moment that I get.
Yeah.
And I find joy in everything that we do. I really do. And I try to be very positive and optimistic in everything.
Yeah. Of course.
And every situation I think that we go through, I say, God, test me.
Yeah.
Try me, Lord.
Yeah.
And I want to do His will to the best that I can. Yeah.
Now, you left the, let's say, your mother church or the Romanian church, and you ventured into more of an Australian culture. I know you left for a while and then you came back, and now you've probably gone fully.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that chapter?
Definitely.
Maybe the first chapter and now where you are now, and what encounters have you had with God? Like, what had happened, what transitions had happened in your mind and in your heart?
I think for us it was more when, our children were small and they could understand certain things, but then when they became, like our daughter's 16 and Simon's 12, 13, and they would start to say, Mum, I don't understand. So that was for me, and Danny was like, all right, because it was a traditional Romanian church. Even though at times we were speaking English, it became more harder because we didn't speak the language fully at home and they didn't read and write constantly. It became harder for them to understand. And I said to Danny, what is the point of us doing God's will, but then we're going to lose our children in the process if they don't understand? They're so important.
Yeah.
And it was crucial for us to make, it was a hard decision because I think Danny was so involved into worship for years.
Yeah.
And it was a very hard decision. But at the same time, I said, where do we want to go from here? How can we help our children grow? How can we grow as a family and go forward together as a family?
Or was it really, I understand the children would have had a big impact.
That was one of the reasons.
But down deep inside, you also needed a transition, didn't you?
Absolutely. I think for me, I was hungry to know more.
Yeah.
To learn more and to do more. Especially for me as a female, I knew that I was limited in some ways that I could grow. Yeah. Maybe it's our culture, maybe it's the way that we were raised up. I felt very restricted. And not that anybody said, put me in a corner, but I think it was limited maybe. Yeah. That's probably the better word.
Or not encouraged enough to explore. Not encouraged,
that's right.
It was like spoon-fed.
That's right. And I think for me, I always had an opinion.
Yeah.
I always had a voice. And I would always, and I love my dad dearly, but I would always challenge my dad.
Good.
And from a very young age, he would say to me, you should have been a boy. And I would always give him a good fight, I think, in conversation-wise. And he said, you're just as stubborn as me, and he knows it. But he's got a big heart. Yeah. And I think that to me is something that I admired in him.
Yeah.
And for me, it was that desire that I wanted to grow and I wanted to get involved.
Yes.
And I felt like I was limited. Yeah. And when I started because we listened online to a lot of sermons, and it opened our eyes, and we just wanted to go, okay, what else is out there? How can we reach out to other people?
So you were getting community in the church, but the feeding was somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. So our growth, I think, once the internet became available more and more to us, we started to research sermons and things that we were looking for answers. And because we've been around so many Australians, I started researching, and I came across people of faith from other churches, met with different pastors. I wanted to know them. I wanted to know, how they operate their church, what do they have, how would, we'd raise our children. Yeah. So there were so many questions, and it was great opportunities. We took them out for dinners, and we wanted to just pick their brain and wanted to know more.
Nice.
We went searching, so to speak.
Now, I'm going to put you a challenging question here. Do you remember any sermons from your mother church?
Sadly, no.
Dorina, I almost cried the other day. I was driving, and I just realized that I don't remember any sermons from the pastors in the church that I served for 17 years. I remember a couple of teachings with Bible verses.
Yeah.
One which was helpful and one which was an absolute shocker, but nothing else. 17 years to be there 3-4 times a week, and I can't remember anything.
I agree.
Not even other people's. So I thought about the pastors, and I don't remember, but not other people's as well. It's like I wasn't there. It's like that chapter. Maybe I was absent. I thought I was absent, and I thought there was something wrong with me. But now hearing you, I don't think I was ever challenged or encouraged or built up.
That's right. And I think this is the key thing for me. When I was 18, I got into network marketing. And until that point, I was in that Romanian community and, conditioned in a certain way. My perspective had changed when I started listening to motivational speakers. Some were Christian.
Yeah.
They helped me to, it's almost like when you go to the top of the mountain and you get a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then when you come back, you think, wow, I was hungry to get more. I was hungry to learn more and to grow. And because the level of awareness, I believe, was only that much, they couldn't give me any more. So they were not to blame. I think for me, it was time to say, you know what? If I can't get fed here and I can't grow, I was going to stagnate. And I felt that I was...
their purpose was to contain that which they carried from Romania here.
Yes.
And all the effort was made to contain that.
Yeah.
And keep that going for as long as possible. And they were hoping that the young generation will fit into that mold, which I think they try to, and it has happened to some extent. I think culturally we did,
Yes.
and I think habitually we did, but spiritually
we weren't growing.
We were dry.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think for me it was, you said something very important. I think when you see somebody that's got a burning desire to do something, I think as a leader, for me, is you can identify gifts in other people.
Yeah.
And you handpick them and you go, right, there's potential there, and help them.
Yeah.
Give them the tools to be able to grow.
Yeah.
And I felt I was lacking myself, but also our children. We were hungry. We were so hungry. And I felt like we weren't get fed, and we started searching. We started looking. And that was the beginning.
I think the culture breeded a sense of, you serve when you're in the front, when you're on stage. And if you're not on stage, you're not serving.
That's right.
And but even if you got to the stage, it wasn't really serving, because it was more of an ego show, a competitive show, which,
it's not what worship should be.
Well, we had no awareness.
That's right.
There was no awareness. No one was speaking into your life because there was no relationship.
That's right.
It was, habitual.
That's right. It's out of habit. I think it was done.
It's interesting that you have
experienced some other stuff.
When did you have a renewal? Do you remember? Can you pinpoint?
It was probably when we first left WA and we travelled around Australia. We had gone to other churches, so it wasn't the first encounter or decision that we made. It's only when we came back and we had the children that we started going back to the community, and because we're surrounded. But it was from a very young age. I knew I wanted to grow. I knew I wanted to learn. And every time I had come back, I felt like I was going backwards. I felt like I was, you're one of those birds that you get put in a cage and you sort of feel like you're locked. And for me, it became a pain. It became so painful to even consider going to church. And this is the honest truth. And it killed me from the inside out. I wanted to break free, and it became unbearable because I felt that I wasn't growing. And I'm one of those people that I'm so keen to learn and grow, but I wasn't experiencing that in the environment that I was in. So I felt like we were always going back. So for me, it was I knew it, and it was just that journey that we had to go through to finally, go
to
together.
Hurt enough so you can make it.
The pain is not big enough. Then we didn't change, and then when the pain.
But you also stayed
enough,
because Danny wanted to stay.
And I think we were serving together, and then we had the children. I stepped down and had more of a mother's role, and I wanted to support him and what God's put in his heart. His passion was to worship and praise God, and he started listening to a lot of sermons and videos and songs, and he wanted to introduce a lot of worship songs, and he just had that passion for worship. I remember from a very young age. First time when we came to Perth, he loved worshiping. So that was really important for him. And I think ultimately for him, it was like, if I can't see my children worship together with me, or as a whole church, to expand, not just one or two people singing together, as a whole church, that was what he craved for, to serve and to see the Holy Spirit come down and the whole church to worship together. That was his dream. And he felt like he couldn't progress. So that was I think the pain for him. But not only that, it was the growth spiritually for us as well. as a whole family.
Do you have spiritual parents?
I do. I have
Who's your spiritual dad, or mum, or both?
Bev,
Bev is your spiritual mum.
absolutely.
Bev Woolhouse,
Bev House.
which we've interviewed, whom we've
Absolutely.
interviewed here at.
I
in
think
previous
she's
episodes.
been a godsend to me when I needed somebody the most. She's been a key player, I think, in a lot of the growth that I've had from in the last 6 years. And God's just used her to do his will, but also to help me break free from where I was and to where I am now. So she's been very supportive in that way.
And you've partnered with her to establish a ministry and a business.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the pantry and Bill's Brews.
So about 3 years ago, I've been in the hospitality industry probably for about 10 years on and off, probably a little bit more, and had gained experience in hospitality and did sales. So I sort of had a little bit of experience in sort of that industry. And she actually was one of the people that I was introduced to by somebody that I had worked for, Shane Mesger, who's a chiropractor.
Yeah.
So I was working for him as a CA, and he said, "Oh, you sound," because I started bringing a lot of people through his practice, and he goes, "You're really good with people. You know, practice has grown." He goes, "Maybe you'd be interested in network marketing or to help people lose weight. We've got a program." And that's when Bev House was introduced to me. She was a networker and had built, multiple businesses. And he said, this only told me this after, but he said, "I made a decision to introduce you to," I had two people to introduce you to. One was another person, or it was Bev House, who was a Christian.
Yeah.
And he knew in the time that I worked for him, he knew that I was a Christian.
Yeah.
And he said, "I think you'll align more with her." So that's my journey started. And I think it was handpicked by God because I was introduced to her. We built a friendship. We built a business with the company that she was in at that time. And that's when we discovered that we had so much in common. And then through that industry, she said, "My son's opening up a little cafe in a surf shop. And you've got some skills, and I think you can help him get started." And she said, "Do you want to get started with him?" I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And for 2.5 years, we started Bill's Brews. It was in a little surf shop. His plan was to have a little window, sell a couple of coffees, maybe some cookies, and maybe some surf gear that the boys had in the surf shop.
Made up.
They were handmade. They're three of the top shapers in Australia or WA. They had a factory at the back, and they would have the surfboards at the front, and we would sell them on their behalf or support them in that sense. And that's where the Bill's Brews started with Jess Woolhouse, which is Bev's son.
Okay.
And
then she began doing the pantry at Nation Church.
Yes. So during the same time, the Bill's Brews around the corner, which is literally 2 minutes down the road, the pantry that she started, the Pantry WA, I remember she used to come in and support me with the Bill's Brews when I needed support. Jess has actually got another great business, electrical business, very big, and it was sort of a hobby. So he literally said, "Dee, if you want to build a business, here it is, do the best that you can." So I was I think I quit about 5 times Bill's Brews because I felt like I knew what I was doing, but I felt a little bit tight to the decisions that I could make because it wasn't my business.
Yeah.
So originally it wasn't my business. And then that's where I would reach out to Bev, and she would come in and help me and mentor me, and she would give me sort of a bit of advice and, just keep going, and she would encourage me. And then I kept on going with it. And then when she told me about the pantry, that she felt like she had a calling to the pantry, and I knew that she'd build multiple of businesses, very successful businesses. And I couldn't believe that she would go and do the pantry. And I said to her, "I'm going to come and check it out." So I remember when she got involved in the very first stages. Volunteering. She didn't get paid. She said she was going to go and do the pantry. And I said to her, "What made you do it?" I said, "I felt a calling. I had a vision. I had a vision that this is where I needed to be, to serve God. And all the skills that I've gained during the network marketing industry and the business that she's built, it's led her to this. And whatever time she had left, she wanted to dedicate to build the pantry. And through that, it was going to be a place where food, grace, and hope, which is the motto of the pantry, was going to be where people were going to get saved and people were going to be looked after.
Yeah.
So that was her calling. And for me, I thought I've always wanted to do something like that. I've always wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
Because I had the Billsborough that I was operating on spare time when I could. Very few times I just went in, and I remember she was getting it all cleaned up and putting systems in place. And she decided that it was going to be a time where it would grow so much they were either going to shut it down or relocate it.
Yeah.
Long story short, when she relocated the pantry, I remember there was probably a period of about a month that she was praying. And she said, I don't know where I'm going to move. I don't know if this is something that, I can move around the corner. I don't know if there's a building nearby. I just don't know. But by faith, she kept on praying. And she said, I had this vision that the pantry had a coffee shop inside of it. And I said, do you want to be part of it? During that time that she was shifting, it was the same time that Jess decided to close Bill's Brews. Mm-hmm. He said, Dee, the wages are pretty much killing me. My wages were killing you. So in the end, he said, you know what, I think Dee, 2.5 years we were building that business. We started to know people in the community. People got to know us. And in the end, he said, it's either you want to take it on, stay here, or relocate it. And then when Bev told me that she was going to relocate, and I thought, you know what, perfect opportunity. I'm going to do it. We prayed about it. I spoke to Danny, and it was a decision. I said to him, we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I just felt in my heart it was the right thing to do. And without hesitation, she moved the pantry, and then in January this year, we started operating side by side.
Yeah.
And that's where our journey began.
And you're operating this beautiful cafe now on your terms.
Yes.
With your menu and a lot of yummy food.
Yes.
And good coffee and great people.
Absolutely.
And you're discipling the girls who work there with you. And it's amazing. I had an amazing lunch there. Thank you so much for receiving us and just showing us around and feeding us. It's godly. The atmosphere is beautiful. Just the setting, the furniture, and everything. The culture you've created there, I think, is it's got good vibes, healthy, spiritual vibes. And I think people feel that, the anointing, when they come into that place.
I think a lot of, I remember the first time we moved in, I don't even know if we were going to succeed or not. And I used to say to Bev, because we had these signs, these flags, we'll say,
I know, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. If we don't get you with the first sign, we'll get you with the fifth or sixth sign. And I used to pray every morning. I said, God, let them see the signs. And I kid you not, people walk in and they would say, we've seen the sign. Yeah. And we asked to look at the girls. I'm like, oh my God, it's like what I prayed for every morning. You must have
about 20 of them on every corner.
Honestly, every corner you turn, because even last week we had somebody came in. Oh, they've been pinched a few times. They've been turned the other way. So every morning I would go and check on them. And I think it's part of what we need to do to keep it going. But yeah, it's been a blessing from the day that we opened. I remember we had pretty much the same sales when we closed down the other shop that we had.
Yeah.
And that to me was just amazing to see a lot of our regular customers that have seen the signs and come back.
Yeah.
And it's just been an amazing partnership to be able to, through the cafe, what we do, it's a great opportunity because people come in and you get to know them. Yeah. And people buy from people they like, know and trust.
Of course.
So we've built a bit of rapport over the 2.5 years at the previous location. And what we like to do...
But now you've expanded.
We've expanded a little bit bigger, food-wise.
Choices, cakes, everything.
And also the sitting area, people come in and have meetings. We have 3-4 beautiful churches around and a lot of people come in. Yeah. There's pastors that come in and they pray.
Well, we love to
as
I said to actually the pastors, you saw it on Facebook. Yes. We had a meeting and there was about, 15 of us, 20 of us. And I'm thinking, would we be able to fit in there?
You would. We'll make a stand.
Yeah. So I actually said to one of the pastors, I said, look, we should try this one day. And he said, yeah, let's do it.
That's amazing. So, it's amazing to see a lot of godly people walking through those doors. And I think when we share what we're doing through the cafe, I think we play a small role in God's plan.
Yeah.
I think, sharing the vision, They feed about 70,000 people a year. This blew me away. And I've seen the work and the hours that they do, and none of them get paid.
Yeah. At the pantry.
At the pantry.
Oh yeah, preparing the hampers.
Absolutely, the food hampers.
Oh, I said to Bev, I said, look, I've never seen a a food ministry so organized and so well done. I mean, she prepares those hampers with the team, and they throw away all the
anything that's not good.
Anything that's you don't get brown bananas.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Even though they received a lot.
Right.
They receive a lot of them.
That's right.
The excellence in the not-for-profit is remarkable.
I think
it is a proof of a desire to do this for God. It's kingdom.
I think seeing that you've nailed it. I think that spirit of excellence in everything they do, and it's passed through obviously from Bev down through the whole team. It blew me away, and I know that everything that she's touched and got herself, she's always given that 110%.
Yeah.
And to see the results, of people coming through and getting blessed to have food for the whole week, that inspired me even more to spread the message.
Yeah.
So when people come through and they buy the coffees and food, they say, oh, what's the pantry? And we support them by selling brand new clothes that her sister, donates 100%. So we on-sell them, and all the funds 100% go to the pantry.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses would jump on board and they donate if they want to donate, or if we ask people, if you know anyone that's struggling, if you know anyone that's finding it hard to put food on the table, send them over and we bless them with beautiful hampers. So there's two things that we share the message: people in need, come down, or how can we help the pantry and support them?
I think it's beautiful, and I love this because it's in the marketplace. Yes, it's nice to be connected with a church and everything, but I think we got too used to that.
Yes.
When marketplace ministries operate in that space with the kingdom values, I think it's quite powerful.
Absolutely.
Because it means that we've moved outside the four walls, and now we are in the fabric of society, answering needs.
That's right.
At the coal face, and I think it's beautiful, and it's just an inspiration to us. So it's good. I'm glad, and it was great to hear Bev's story as well, and now yours from Bill's Brews, not just from the pantry, interconnected. So obviously we will encourage people to go and visit Bill's Brews in Wangara, and the pantry next door, because they are wonderful ministries and businesses as well.
Thank you.
What's next for Dee?
For Dee, I think it's my biggest thing is be a humble servant.
Yeah.
I think I used to try and do everything in my own power, and I've found out that I've burnt out very quickly. I'm relying more on God and the Holy Spirit to guide me.
Yeah.
I think from the moment this is something I know that we have a group. There's about 3 of us that are on that group, and we call it the support group. I'll wake up at about 3:30 every morning, and there's either a motivational speaker, one of your favorites as well, that we listen to, and just we start off every morning. For me it was prayer, listening to God's word, that will make me be more aware of where God wants me to take me. Okay. But through the Bill's Brews, it's a vehicle that I'm able to reach out to people.
Yeah.
We've connected with so many people in the community, and the more people that we're getting to know, it's a way to connect by serving them a coffee, by giving them some food. Listen to these people's stories. We built such a community in there, and it's opened doors that I would have never ever thought that, like when we first started, where we are 6 months now. It is unbelievable, and where God wants us to go. So I think it's just been more in tune and listening to the Holy Spirit and what His plan is for us.
Yeah.
So I'm learning that.
Well, it's better to work with God than for God.
Oh, absolutely. It's a sign of relief. I think for me, because I've always had that burning desire and I didn't know where to use my energy and my time, I've always worked 2 or 3 jobs. I've been classified as a workaholic. But I find now that when I have a tunnel vision and I'm focused on what I truly believe God's prepared me for this time, for where He wants me to work.
Well, this is your assignment. That's why you thrive, because there's nothing else that you need to give your attention to. Just, as part of your life,
Yeah.
this is your assignment. Obviously, you've got a family and your
That's
Christian
right.
walk, but so you wake up at 3:30.
3:30 in the morning. Got to get those bacon and eggs ready.
So you're in there at 5 or just before 5?
Just before 5.
On your own? Or
Yeah,
somebody else
I've
comes?
got Bev's already there. She's already packed a few, probably about 20, 30 boxes. I know she gets there very early.
Yeah.
There's 3 of us in particular that get there very early. Beck as well. She's the second one in charge of the
So
pantry.
if we're ever hungry early in the morning, we
Absolutely.
can just knock at the window.
It's amazing when you love what you're doing that you can just wake up.
That's right.
I mean, we were down south just over the long weekend, and I'd wake up at 4 o'clock. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And when I'm awake, so I've got to do something productive or, go on the
Go for a
laptop.
walk or something.
That's right. Otherwise, I'll wake the whole house up. But I think when you love what you're doing, it's not work.
Yeah.
And no matter how many hours.
Well, it is work, but it's not a job.
It's not a job. That's right. So for us, it's actually as hard as it is at times.
So what time do you close? 3 o'clock or 2:30?
2:30.
Yeah.
We close Monday to Friday, and then Saturday we open until 12.
So you're still open on Saturday?
Saturdays as well. It's the only place I think that's open in
From 7 till 12?
7 to 12:30.
So the dealers come in and...
A lot of locals. It's crazy because a lot of locals, even residential people,
From
drive
Hockey?
through. They go to the markets. You've got people fixing their cars, driving through. We've got a lot of gyms around there as well. Okay. So it's such a different vibe on Saturday.
Yeah.
You have people that are relaxed. Every table is full. People come to shop, for a great cause. So they buy clothes to support the pantry. It's a good excuse.
Yeah.
But it's just great to see people coming together for that cause.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Wonderful.
God's shifting people.
Amen. And you're part of it. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I've learned so much about, the transition into, doing God's will and just enjoying it and thriving in it. But, there's so much that God has to work on us. We just are not ready, eh?
Oh gosh, I feel like we're just getting started. I think this is just I think if we were to see the future, it would shake us to the core. I think I'll be paralyzed. I think where God wants us to be, where He's going to take us. Right. But I think He only reveals it in increments.
Aren't you glad that your kids don't have to go through your journey?
Yes, I think, look, I've got Jessica who. So
they fast forward in some areas.
That's right.
But they'll also have their own journey.
Absolutely. I think it's given me an opportunity to get closer to Jessica in particular. She's the oldest and she works with us in the cafe. And, even Bev can vouch for this. In the last 6 months that she's worked with people that are very like-minded, people of faith.
Yeah.
And, having mentors that I've had now influence her, it's been massive. The change in her has been amazing.
For that part alone, it was worth doing the business.
Absolutely. If anything else fails, which I hardly doubt, I think for me to see so many lives change, it was valuable. I can't put money on that. I said to Danny, if we don't make a penny,
doesn't matter.
It was worth every bit of it.
Just where we are now.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
I hear. I was thinking the other day, I was doing some accounting, and I was, I was taking snaps of the receipts for the software, for the accounting software. And I'm going through them and I'm thinking, Evangeline could do this, my daughter, my 8-year-old. I thought I could get her here once a month to just snap my receipts.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
So I'm already thinking like you, it's
Absolutely.
like what parts of what I'm doing can they do,
I think what Jessica said to me, they'd say, Mum, the personal development and the journey that she's embarking is amazing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff that I listen to now forward onto her.
Yeah.
And then when we talk at work, she gets to hear it over and over again, not just me as a mum, but I think having those people around her speak life and God's word into her, it makes a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is what I mean. We didn't have that. We had church and services, but we had
nothing outside for them to do.
No support network. If you spend, imagine if you out of, I was doing 25 hours a week in church, 30 hours a week in church. I was there 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week for 15 years. And I don't think I've ever had one-on-one with anybody.
No.
For an hour.
I think it's the first time with anybody from the community that I've actually had a chance to speak and, share our story.
Yeah.
And what we want to do, and I wish somebody would have.
Yeah.
I think I would have been open to do something, even just something small that will make an impact.
But it's happening. It's happening in pockets, and it's
Yes.
happening with people individually in their own circles. We just haven't crossed paths.
That's right. Yeah, there's quite a lot of that actually doing the same thing.
And God's doing amazing things, I think, in our generation. And I'm actually excited for our children.
I am
Because
too.
I think, our ceiling is their
That's
platform
right.
that they walk on. And I think it's awesome. I'm actually excited with what
Absolutely.
the future brings for them.
I think we were that middle generation where we ended up in Australia. We've experienced Romania.
We had to bridge the gap.
That's right.
We can still do it, but we don't do it well there with them, and we're not
Yes.
doing it well with our kids.
That's right.
We're still, hybrids.
That's right. We're in the middle. Wow. We were chosen, I think, for this time. Absolutely.
But I think both parties appreciate us. I think the
Yes.
children appreciate us, and I think the generation that is more stagnant also appreciates it.
I think for me, if it wasn't for where we came from, it gave us some sort of foundation to where we are now. For me, I think having my children, my parents, my parents being people of God, all those things that they taught me. I know my dad taught me how to sing
Yeah.
with accordion.
Nice.
I'll never forget it. And my mum was the one, she was a woman of prayer.
Yeah.
I remember she used to put us one on one side and one on the other side, and she taught us how to pray. So for me, from a young age, this is something that was embedded in us.
Yeah.
And I think God used them for that time in our life that served us. And, that seed was planted from a very young age.
Yeah.
And they did the best they could with what they were given. And I think once we wanted to know more, I think God's opened up the doors for us to go through and take us where He wants to take us.
Beautiful.
So we bless those people that have
Thank
been
you
around
so
us.
much for coming tonight and just sharing and just being vulnerable and, being yourself.
Thank you, and thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to share for the very first time my story. What an honor. Thank you.
Praise God.
Thank you.
What an amazing story. Well, you never know where these land, do you? But what a wonderful story from Dorina Crisan, who is managing Brew and owns the Brew Cafe. Bill's Brew Cafe in Mangara, and also part of the Pantry Ministry, which is right in the same building. What a journey she's had, and preparing for the next generation and just enjoying the assignment that God has given her. The fact that she discovered the assignment and now she's stepping in it, and she's just comfortably doing it and working with joy and focusing on that. And I think that's an encouragement for us as well, to find your assignment, find what God has called you to do, to shift in this patch of history, the call of God on your life, and just to engage in it, because life is too short. And maybe you wandered enough in the wilderness. It's time to focus on something amazing for God, for His kingdom, and combine the work. I mean, most of our work will be in the marketplace. I know we'd love to all do something in church, but church is only one day a week. The other 6, we are in the marketplace and in the family. So just take the ministry from church outside and see in that call of God on your life, in your gifting, how you can apply that and bring the kingdom and advance it out there. I really pray that this blesses you, and if it does, give us 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and like us on the other channels that you're watching or listening to this, and also share with others so others can be encouraged and be built up. We look forward to seeing you next time at Kingdom Stories from Down Under. I am Natanael Costea.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.